Hey, Tommy from the Run Testers with a very exciting shoe. In this video, we are going to be reviewing the Asics Superblast 2. Let's have a look. The Asics Superblast 2 costs £200 or $200. It weighs 259 grams or 9.1 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 8mm. The Superblast 2 follows the hugely popular Superblast with a couple of key updates. The first of those is a new FF Blast Turbo Plus midsole layer designed to be lightweight, bouncy and more durable, and there's a redesigned engineered woven upper to improve comfort, breathability and fit. Underneath that layer is the thinner FF Blast Plus Eco Foam that works alongside the FF Blast Turbo Plus to improve the cushioning and comfort of the ride. There's also a slightly modified layer of Asics grip outsole rubber that the brand says is lower density than the previous version and provides a softer ride, and the stack height sees a 0.5mm decrease across the heel and toe. In addition, the tongue design features a stretch mesh wing construction to improve the fit and reduce movement on the run. So the fit for me in the Superblast 2, I'm a size 8 in the UK. I found this to be very comfortable. There's plenty of space just before the toe. It's actually slightly smaller for me than the original Superblast, but there is plenty of space around the side of the foot as well. There's quite a lot of wiggle room in the front of this shoe. And I have a fairly average size foot. I didn't have any problems getting a comfortable lockdown fit in this shoe, so I would definitely stay to my size in the Superblast 2.
So in terms of fit, I've got my Superblast 2 in the UK size 8. That is my typical running shoe size. I would say in general, Asics shoes do fit true to size for me, and I would say that is the story here. With this shoe, I would say I was pretty happy with the space up front in the toes, at the front of the toes, but also at the side. You know, if you're going to run long in this shoe, it's the kind of space I'd want to see. Wasn't too short, didn't feel too tight there. When you go back into the middle of the shoe, it does kind of narrow a little bit more. I think there's elements here of the Metaspeed shoes. It's not obviously thin and, you know, as lightweight as that upper, but I do think, you know, in terms of the ventilation that you're getting here in the upper design and how it kind of narrows a little bit more in the midfoot, that's definitely a Metaspeed, I think, influence. And you go back, it's a little bit more Nova Blast. I think the lacing, I think the tongue and leather padding you're getting here, very Nova Blast. I did find in terms of the lacing and the lockdown, I did have to go back to that first eyelet to kind of, I did get a little bit of kind of heel kind of lockdown issues, nothing major, but I think once I went and did that, it wasn't an issue for me. And then again, at the heel collar, similar padding to the Nova Blast 4. At the Achilles, it's probably a little bit wider, opens up a little bit more than it does at the Nova Blast in comparison. But yeah, I think the fit has been very good for me. No major issues that I couldn't, fix with that kind of, adjusting the lacing setup. And yeah, I think going true to size should work for most people.
So I've done about 70k in the Superblast 2 so far, and that has varied between recovery runs, quite a few 10ks at the moment, and a couple of interval sessions, fartlek sessions as well. I haven't raced in this shoe yet. I quite like to, but I just haven't got around to it yet. It hasn't had loads of changes over the Superblast 1. It's pretty much the same style of shoe. Which is a good thing, because I think if Asics had tried to change the shoe and make some big changes to it and it didn't work, I think it would have been a big problem, because it's such a popular shoe at the moment. The changes that have been made are largely in the midsole. So there's a dual layer midsole in here. The new midsole foam in the top section of the shoe is the FF Blast Turbo Plus, the new midsole foam. Thinner layer at the bottom of the shoe is the FF Blast Plus Eco, and the idea behind that is that you get these sort of two different types of midsole working together to give a really good ride. The upper section of the midsole is very much the racy, performance level, lightweight, speedy midsole foam, and that lower midsole foam is a little bit more like your daily foam, so it just gives a little bit more cushioning and softness, and works really, really well. It was the same concept for the previous shoe, although that used the earlier foams in the Superblast. So same sort of concept. It wants to get the best of both worlds from those two midsole foams. Quite a lot of shoes try to do this, where they have two layers. Quite often it doesn't work. It did work really well in the Superblast. In the Superblast 2, it works really well also. To be honest, over the course of the training that I've done in this shoe, I don't think it's a massive change from the original Superblast. I think it does feel a little bit poppier. It does feel a little bit faster, but only a tiny bit. I don't think there's a massive difference in the way that this shoe rides in comparison with the original Superblast. The other change in the shoe is there's this new engineered mesh upper, which is a little bit more like what you found on the Nova Blast 4. But to be honest, I didn't have any issues at all with the original Superblast upper, and I don't really notice any major benefits from having this one on as well. It's getting a bit hotter in the UK at the moment. Maybe it might have a bit more when it benefits when it comes to breathability. Haven't noticed it yet. So over the course of those runs, what I've found with this shoe is that it is very much a nice, simple progression of the original Superblast. It's still a great shoe for doing pretty much any run-in. In many ways, it feels like a super trainer. I was really surprised when I tested the original Superblast out that it didn't have a plate in it. I hadn't looked it up before I tested that out. It's quite a rigid shoe, thanks to that top layer of midsole foam, and as a result, it really guides your foot nicely. It's in no way squishy when you're running in it. It feels very, very responsive, and has a lovely turnover in it as well. When you're picking up the pace in the shoe, it is really smooth. You just sort of glide forward, and you get a nice little bit of pop from that responsiveness. There's not loads of bounce in this shoe. It's a little bit firmer in some ways than what you get in some super trainers, but overall it is just a very fast, efficient feeling shoe that feels very lightweight on the feet. When you're doing easy runs in it, it's a lovely cruising shoe. It's great for those longer efforts. When I was training for most of the marathons that I've done over the past year, I've used the Superblast for a lot of those runs. You get the same sort of feeling with this as well. It is a fantastic long distance training shoe that allows you to pick up the pace, to do tempo efforts, to do fartlek sessions and things like that. Just feels really, really good. One other thing that's different from the original Superblast is there's a slight change on the outsole, not massively. There just is a little bit less rubber on the shoe, presumably to keep the weight down. However, I have found after weighing both of the shoes that this actually weighs it slightly more, but that 10 grams more than my Superblast 1, which is strange because I think it's designed to be lighter, but it's actually come out a little bit heavier for me in this sample that I've got here. So overall, I would say that it is still one of the best shoes out there if you're looking for an all-rounder trainer that is really can do races, can do fast efforts, and can just do really comfortable cruising as well. I'd definitely say that it skews more towards faster efforts and the longer efforts where you're trying to maintain a consistent pace. It's not the best easy shoe in the world. That midsole foam isn't that soft, but it's not bad at it. You could easily go and do recovery runs in the shoe, but you probably won't want to because of the cost of the shoe. It's quite an expensive shoe. But for me, I really enjoy the shoe. It's still one of the my favourite shoes out. And definitely going to be using it for a lot more runs coming up.
So in terms of my running time, I've done 50k in the Superblast 2, and that has been across 2 of these shoes because unfortunately somebody pinched my Superblast 2. This is actually Tom's, so I completed my testing with his shoe. So from a kind of durability point of view, I'm definitely going to reserve kind of talking about that because obviously I've used 2 shoes over that distance and I want to do a little bit more testing before talking a little bit more about that. Now I haven't run in the original Superblast, but I have run in other kind of super trainer shoes. Now, the first thing I would say about the Superblast 2 that's really stood out for me, obviously the big deal here is the weight. It's a big kind of stack cushion shoe, but it is a good weight. You know, it is about the same weight as something like the Nova Blast 4. You know, it's measured in my UK size 8, pretty similar in terms of those weights. You compare it to other kind of super trainers, it definitely is lighter than most of those shoes. It's lighter than something like the Prime X 2.0 Strung, I think, you know, and that's the biggest asset for the Superblast. So when I have run a little bit slower and easier in it, hasn't felt cumbersome or, you know, heavy going to do that. When I have tried to run quicker in it, when I've raced in it as well too, it hasn't felt like an effort. It hasn't felt like the shoe has worked against me because there's that added weight. And I think the distribution of the weight is very good in this shoe. Now, when you get into what you're getting in the cushioning, and that is really kind of big thing here with the Superblast, and it's the kind of, you know, upgrading what we got in terms of the foams in the first Superblast. So taking what we got in the Metaspeed Sky Paris and Edge Paris, but also in the Nova Blast 4. So you've got something that's going to be bouncy, kind of lively, but also something that's going to be protective and really give you an enjoyable ride, but also something that's going to be protective and going to give you that kind of comfort, but also know that you can run long in this and it's going to give you something that's going to work well on those longer runs, and, you know, not feel like your leg is going to be beaten up. So the first thing I would say for me, that first run I did, 5-mile run, the ride in it just feels lively, feels enjoyable. It's got that lovely bounce to it. It's pretty stable as well too. It does very quickly get you from that hill to your toe. I would say at the hill, you're definitely, there's obviously more of the foam there for me, and it is a little bit firmer compared to what you're getting in the forefoot. And it kind of reminds me of you rock back on that hill, you get that kind of firmer, kind of harder feel, but it's not uncomfortable, you know, or horrible in terms of, you know, that kind of firmer feel. And you get onto your toes and it just feels softer and it feels springier. And it reminds me a little bit of my time in the Metaspeed Sky Paris, where you just kind of sink a little bit more into that forefoot and up at front in the toes. But the ride just works very nicely. And when I've run kind of quicker in it, I did a kind of shorter distance relay, kind of club race, pretty treacherous, kind of rainy, wet conditions. It felt fantastic. It felt, you know, I was a bit concerned, is it going to give me that ride, that kind of propulsive feel that I'd want, you know, when I am racing and running a little bit harder? It definitely is there. Obviously isn't as aggressive as what you're getting in the Metaspeed series. You don't have a plate here, but I do think you do get a nice kind of propulsive feel there, enough to make it feel like you can run a little bit quicker, definitely compared to some of the other super trainers that felt more comfortable to do that, a little bit closer to something like the Prime X 2.0 Strung. And when I've run slower in this shoe, you know, it hasn't felt like an effort to do that. It's felt comfortable to do that first and foremost, you know, because that weight is very good. As I said, you know, you do drop back and there's a lot of foam here. It's, like I said, it's a bit firmer at the back of the shoe, but I don't think it's overly firm. And I think Asics kind of strikes a very good balance in terms of giving you some bounce, a little bit of softness, but also there's some hardness there to make sure that you're getting something responsive, but also that's going to, you know, protect those legs over that distance. So yeah, overall, pretty much every run I threw at it, it felt very good to do. I can't, you know, pull out one run where I felt, you know, that didn't really kind of work for me. And that's really the key to the Superblast here. In terms of the outsole, so as I said, I'm not going to really talk too much about the durability side of things, but I think in terms of grip, you know, it's been pretty good for me. There's not a huge amount of rubber here. It's kind of focused on those areas at the forefoot and at the heel. And so yeah, that race I did, it was very wet. It held up absolutely fine. There was some kind of twisting and turning, and, you know, it didn't struggle in those conditions. So, but generally I've been in dry conditions and it's been absolutely fine. So yeah, all very positive in pretty much all the runs that I've done in the Superblast 2. Really enjoyed the runs, enjoyed racing in it, enjoyed easing off and running slower in it. Super trainer that I enjoyed. And yeah, very much a positive feeling running in the Superblast 2.
So my verdict on the Asics Superblast 2, there aren't many changes in this shoe which are really, really noticeable, but it does have a few improvements to the overall ride. It does feel a little bit more smooth. It does feel a little bit poppier for me, but not massively. If you've got the Superblast 1 and you've got a lot of miles left in it, you're not going to get loads more from buying this shoe. If you haven't got the Superblast 1 and you really want a fast all-rounder trainer that can do it all, then you might want to get the Superblast 2, unless you can get the Superblast 1 considerably cheaper, which is not very likely. So I would say that this is, if you're looking for a super trainer, there's obviously things like the Saucony Dolphin Speed 4, there's things like the New Balance SC Trainer, and loads of other ones as well, Hokamak X, things like that. This shoe, unlike those shoes, doesn't have a plate in it, but it doesn't feel that way. It does feel, based on its rigidity and how it rides, that it could well have a plate in it. It rides like a fast trainer. It really skews towards those longer tempo efforts as well. It's a fantastic cruising shoe, and I definitely think if you're willing to pay the money for it, you do get a really, really good shoe with this. It's one of my top shoes of all time, probably, the Superblast 1 and now the Superblast 2. So big fan of it, and definitely want to look at if you haven't tried the Superblast before and you want to get really pricey but really good super trainer.
So my verdict on the Asics Superblast 2, and obviously this is my first experience of running in the Superblast, and I would say it has been very enjoyable to run in the Superblast 2. I I feel like in terms of all the kind of max cushion super trainer style shoes that I've tested, this is the one that I feel like actually delivers on that remit to be a shoe that you can run slow, you can run a little bit quicker in it, and it absolutely can handle that. And I think also crucially for me, if you're doing a quicker run and you need to ease up within a run, it doesn't feel awkward to do that. And I feel like with some of those super trainers, it does feel like it either works better one way, going a little bit quicker, going a little bit more up tempo, but it feels a little bit more awkward, easing off or doing the opposite and not quite getting that balance right. But I do think the balance here is very good on the Superblast 2. Now, as I said, I can't vouch for how it compares to the Superblast because I haven't run in that shoe, but all I can say is that I have run in other super trainers. I think for me this is above all of those shoes. I think you look at something like the Primex 2.0 Strung, that's probably got a little bit more of a faster edge to it than this shoe, but I do think in terms of the upper on that shoe, it's probably a little bit more fussy to kind of get into, and I don't think that shoe is as nice to run slower in. I just don't feel like it's built for my slower pace, particularly something like the Skyward X, where again I don't think you can go all out or run as quick in that shoe just because of the weight of it. There's a very nice midsole in there as well too, and I really enjoyed running in that shoe, but I think if I had to pick between the two shoes and I was doing a mixture of paces in a run, I would be going for this shoe. So for me, this kind of stands out as the super trainer to beat still. It is expensive and you could probably get a couple of shoes that could work for similar types of runs that, this shoe, something you can do use for your up-tempo runs, something you can use for your slow recovery runs and you can get a good match. But I think if you wanted a shoe, an all-in-one shoe that can do all of those things and potentially be a shoe you can race in, I do think this is a shoe that can do that. As I said, I haven't had a bad run in the Superblast 2. I've really enjoyed my time in it. I think a lot of people are going to like this. As I said, I'll leave it to Tom to talk about how it compares and whether you should get this over the Superblast, the original. But I think for me, in terms of experience Superblast for the first time, I can't really have many complaints about what I've got in this shoe.